Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. A little bit of a different video here today. So the WRX is on a little bit of a break out here in California in the summer times. Um, some of the tracks out here are in areas that hit over 100 degrees, and given that the WRX is a turbo car, it tends to see some kind of uncomfortably high oil and coolant temperatures. So we're going to take a break for about a month and a half. The next event will be at Laguna Seca, and hopefully it's a lot cooler. But in the meantime, I thought I'd cover some of the things that we've got planned for the car. So the first thing I've been looking at is hood louvers for the WRX. And this actually really revolves around the coolant and oil temps that I see during the summer. So I don't want to just not track the car all summer, but I don't want to also pay for the expensive fees required to go to tracks like Laguna Seca or Sonoma Raceway. And so that really leaves me with tracks like Thunder Hill, which is located in Willows and tends to see over 100 degrees during the summertime, or maybe even Buttonwillow, which I tend to avoid because it's quite far and it also is super hot. And if anything happens, I think I'm outside of my AAA tow radius. So I am looking at louvers to hopefully reduce some oil and coolant temperatures or temps. And I've did a lot of research and I came back to Verus. Now I do have Verus low control arms, and one of the things that I really admire and like about Verus is the fact that they do quite a bit of testing with their products. And so it's not just all for show, but they do put in some thought and try to design their products from a functional perspective. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, instead of just kind of buying louvers and cutting your hood and installing them yourself, why not get a carbon fiber hood? And the hoods themselves are quite expensive, right? You're looking at about $1,200, $1,300, $1,400. And although they do have louvers, I haven't ever seen any testing done from the company or third party to validate whether or not those louvers work. So that just really leaves me with Verus. And so one of the things that really has drawn me to this is in this image you see here. Verus took the time to map out the pressure zones across the front of the WRX. You can see that colors that are darker purple, blue, and light green, those are relatively low pressure zones. And as we look at the yellow and red, that's considered a higher pressure zone. And a little bit about louvers. They're designed to help promote air flow out of the engine bay. And ideally, you want to have louvers in very, very low pressure zones on the hood. Because behind the radiator is a high pressure zone, right? You've got air coming in, building up against the radiator, which is a high pressure zone, and then you want a low pressure zone following it to kind of draw the air out. So if you may or may not remember from some of the science classes you may have taken, air likes to move from high pressure to low pressure. Right? That's how we get wind outside, right? The wind is caused by, one of the causes of wind is high pressure to low pressure movement. So we want to place these louvers in areas on the hood that are kind of either dark blue or light blue. And so that's one of the things that Verus has done. So they've mapped out this hood, as you can see here, and then they've placed the louvers in areas on the hood that are relatively low pressure zones. So one of the things that you, like right here, one of the things you don't want to do is have your louvers up close to the windshield. Those are considered high pressure zones, right? And so if it's a relatively high pressure zone up close to the windshield, there's a chance here that instead of letting air out of the engine bay and out of the hood and into the outside atmosphere, you might be sucking air into the engine bay. that's just a general statement. That's not what would happen if you were to put it up here. I haven't tested it. I don't know if Verus has tested it, but that's from a generally speaking perspective about high pressure, low pressure situations. The other really cool thing that they've done is that they've worked inside of the kind of the structural ribs of the hood to not compromise the hood. And so you can see here that there's actually a piece, like a foam backing piece here that kind of wraps around, so you can't see these. But if you remove it, this is what it exposes, and they've gone ahead and placed it inside of kind of one of these recesses so that you don't have to cut into the rib that reinforces the hood, which is a bonus in my opinion. So really like the fact that Verus has taken the time to create all this information and to put it out there. They also had what they call an informative packet that has some data that they've collected regarding the use of hood louvers. Unfortunately, this information isn't super applicable to the WRX or STI. One, the hood is a BRZ or an FRS, so the profile of the car is going to be completely different. Two, they've got 4 louvers instead of 2 louvers, and the sizes of the louvers are completely different. And on top of that, they do some kind of idle testing, but their race test is simulated, so it may not truly reflect what you would see on the track. And then lastly, they don't talk about oil or coolant temperatures, which I'm most concerned about. So the goal or the idea here is that those louvers will promote faster airflow over the radiator and oil cooler, and hopefully net me some cooler temps during the summer months. So we'll see with that. This one's going to take a little bit. I've got to source another hood, but that should be a fun little project. Okay, so the next item up that I have planned for the car is, in addition to the race capture data logging system that's currently inside of the WRX, went ahead and purchased the Autosport Labs Shift X3. So essentially this is a shift light, and there's a gear, like a gear position readout, flanked by 2 alert lights, and then there's some buttons here. So let's see, here's a quick little, here's a quick little kind of like video on the gear Shift X3. So obviously attack, right, gear position, and then there's some alert lights as well, left and right. So I want to use this for coolant and oil pressure. I don't know if I can have more than 1 alert per LED. So I think there's 4 different colors that I can use, and maybe I can use 2 pairs of colors to represent 1 parameter. So 1 LED or one side of the Shift X3 can represent 2 parameters, and the other side can represent another 2 parameters. So maybe I can do oil pressure, oil temp, coolant temp, and then I don't know, maybe like a knock sensor. I'm not entirely sure yet. This has already arrived, and all we got to do is wire this into the race capture, which should only take half an hour at max. I just got to dig through the seat, underneath the seat, and figure out which wires I used for what. And then I've got to figure out how to mount it. And right now, I'd like to mount it right above the dash, but we'll see. That is TBD. I need to figure out a mounting situation for it. But this is going to be super cool. I like the really, I don't need the tach or the gear position stuff. I want the flashing alerts. Although I have the tablet, it's a little too outside of my frame of view, and I'm really only looking at that tablet when I'm going down the straights. And as you may have caught in a previous video, the car is starting to see some oil starvation issues coming out of certain corners or elevation changes. So this flashing alert is going to be super useful. So that's really the goal of this. It's not terribly expensive but you do require the race capture data logger. So I'll make a video on this. I think this will be coming out in the next week or so, and I think it'll be a pretty cool one. So that's all I've got planned for the WRX right now. Between this, the Shift X3, the hood louvers, and probably the drop link video, I think that should keep me pretty busy for the next month. If there's anything else you guys want to see or want to learn about and I can share, please don't hesitate to ask in the comment section. And thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.